Part 85. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 843. Xiaoan was the first to wake up. He turned over and saw that he was in a strange place. He was a little flustered for a while. When he saw the twins lying on their backs, he hurriedly shook them up. Get up, we were taken away by the bad guys gone. The maid waiting outside heard the movement and came in with a smile on her face. Are all the young masters awake? Xiaoan blinked at him, shielded the twins who were rubbing their eyes in a daze behind her, straightened her chest and asked, "Who are you?" The maid trembled a little when she heard his voice. She thought it was cold. She hurriedly put on clothes for him, and said with a smile, "This servant is a maid in the palace, please help the young master to wash up." The tiger head and the little lion were already awake, and asked chirpingly, "Where are my father and mother?" "The lord has gone to court, the Wangfei and the duke's wife are talking with the queen, the slaves will help the three young masters to wash up." Xiaoan heard that they were not tied up, so she breathed a sigh of relief, pushed away the maid's hand, and ran out without shoes. "Brethren, wait for me," the little lion pouted, slid off the soft couch, and ran out after him. Hudu also hurriedly ran behind his younger brother. The 14 or 15-year-old maid had limited strength and couldn't stop the children at all, so she ran behind in shock. As soon as Xiaoan ran out of the inner room, she looked around in a daze, not knowing where her mother was. The little lion came up from behind, grabbed his hand and said, "I heard mother's voice, come with me." "Why didn't I hear it?" Before Xiaoan could ask, she was dragged by the little lion and ran ahead. The maids and eunuchs wanted to pick them up, but the little lion slapped them down and knocked them down, shouting, "We will go by ourselves." Huda caught up from behind, pinched his waist and said, "You are not allowed to bully others." Xiao Xiang and Xiaoan heard the voice and ran in from the main hall. Seeing the eunuchs and maids surrounding the three of them, they hurriedly shouted, "What are you doing?" The maids and eunuchs were crying, they just wanted the three young masters to wear shoes. Seeing a familiar person, Xiaoan's heart dropped completely, and then her eyes turned red with grievance. She looked at the little bear accusingly, and asked, "Where is my wet nurse?" Little Xiang rushed forward to hug him, patted his back and coaxed him, "She is outside the palace, we will see her when we leave the palace." Xiaoan pouted, "Then why don't you accompany us?" But the tiger head and the little lion had already surrounded Xiaobao and looked at him in amazement. "So this is the elder brother of the prince? Smaller than our brother. You are so beautiful." Xiaobao combined all the advantages of Qi Xiaoyuan and Li Jinghua, and he has always received a good education. He just stood there with a smile on his face. Even though he was not as tall as Xiao Xiang, the two little ones looked up to him. Therefore, as soon as they met, the twins confirmed Xiaobao's status in their hearts, equal to the eldest brother. Looking at the two cousins, Xiaobao was also very surprised. He stared at the two for a long time but still couldn't tell the difference between them. "Xiao Xiang, are the brothers awake?" Xiaobao was about to touch the faces of the two of them, when he heard the voice. He withdrew it, and the tiger head turned and ran to his mother, but the little lion stared at Xiaobao. He looked at her hand, and finally pulled it up and put it on his face, and said with a smile, "Brother Prince, you can touch it if you want." Xiaobao. With the voice of the child, the hall suddenly became lively. The queen pulled the little lion and the tiger head to stand in a row in front of her. After a long time, she couldn't tell who was who. She held them in her arms strangely, and said enviously, "Aling, your two sons are precious. They are being naughty, don't praise them, or your tail will be up to the sky when you go back." "Whose tail is up to the sky?" Qi Xiaoyuan brought Qi Heiran and Fan Zijin in with a smile. Everyone hurriedly got up to salute him. Qi Xiaoyuan waved his hands, looked at the twins as well, and said with a smile on his face, "I have met all these children, but these two have never met. Come and let Uncle Huang have a look." The twins happily ran to Qi Xiaoyuan, looking at him with bright eyes, a pair of eyes that were exactly the same as Heiran's and his. Chi Xiaoyuan was even happier, hugged the two of them in his arms, and sat on the couch to talk to them. The two younger ones were also very curious about Uncle Huang, but they were quickly attracted by the people at the gate of the hall. Chi Xiaoyuan followed their gazes and saw that it was the princess's wet nurse who was holding the princess. Thinking that the three children were only about a month apart, he smiled and opened his hands, "Bring the princess here and let her become her cousin." Mingzu immediately attracted everyone's attention, and Xiaoxiang and Xiaobao also came to the emperor to look at Mingzu. Mingzu was a little shy, and buried her head in her father's arms, then secretly raised her head to look at everyone after a while. Seeing that she was cute and pretty, and also younger than himself, the little lion touched her body, took out a grass dragonfly from his arms, and gave it to everyone. She flaunted, "My father made this up for me, and it's for you." Mingzu looked at the grass dragonfly curiously, carefully held it in her hand and looked at it. One day, the prince went to pick up straw-weaving dragonflies. Chi Xiaoyuan glared at Chi Heiran, but Chi Heiran didn't see him, he was busy staring at the little lion. Huda looked at his sister twice and lost interest. The dim sum on the table next to him was even more attractive to him. At this time, he was holding the dim sum to eat. Now Mu Yangling and Chi Heiran stared at the child. Chi Xiaoyuan quickly reached out and snatched the snack from his hand. Seeing the child looking at him with a grieved face, he hurriedly coaxed, "Uncle Huang ordered someone to prepare breakfast, we will have breakfast in a while, we can't eat snacks. Dim sum is sweet and greasy, how can it be eaten as a meal?" Chi Xiaoyuan paid special attention to these things after he heeded the doctor's advice on keeping in good health, so even if he felt sorry for him, he never gave the snacks to Hutu, and even asked the maids to remove all the snacks from the hall, so that people could prepare breakfast quickly. Hutiou looked at Uncle Huang with a face full of shock. He didn't expect him to be so stingy, so he turned his head and threw himself into his father's arms, saying, "Daddy, let's give Uncle Huang some money." Chi Heiran didn't dare to ask his son why, he just nodded in response. Chi Xiaoyuan asked curiously, "Why did you give Uncle Huang money? It's too pitiful to give you money to spend. I don't even give me snacks. I'm more stingy than my elder brother." Chi Heiran wished he could cover his son's mouth. Chi Xiaoyuan put Mingzu on the couch to play, and waved at Hutu, "Come here, Uncle Huang." Chi Xiaoyuan hugged the tiger's head and asked, "Why am I stingy and don't give you snacks, but you want to give me money instead?" I know, the little lion on the side raised his hand and shouted, "Brother is very poor and has no money to buy snacks, so he only buys one for us to share. If you don't give us any snacks, you must sell them money, you are more pitiful than Big Brother." What he said was unclear, but Chi Xiaoyuan understood, his heart was sour and sweet at the moment, he stroked the tiger's head and praised, "What a good boy, but Uncle Huang doesn't want your money." Going to stare at Chi Heiran again, "I know you want to train little bear, but you can't let him be too restrained. The children and grandchildren of our Chi family can't worry about those 2 or 3 pennies. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 844. Little Xiang was short of money, so that when he took his 2 younger brothers to the street, he only bought them a share, a candied haws, a sesame seed cake, even a toy, and bought 2 children to share. Someone once said in private that Xiaoxiang was stingy and the twins heard it, so the twins remembered that someone who is as reluctant to spend money as his brother is stingy. Although Little Bear is reluctant to spend money outside, he doesn't restrict them to eat at home, he just takes whatever he wants. Seeing that the emperor is not willing to give them the snacks on the table, Tiger Head and the little lion naturally feel that the emperor my uncle is heartbroken, and the reason for his heartache must be because he is poor. Don't think they don't know that dim sum can be sold for money. Chi Xiaoyuan also knew that Xiaoxiang bought a single share of things for his 2 younger brothers, because the child wrote everything to Xiaobao in the letter. Today I took my younger brothers to the street to buy a candied haws, a sesame seed cake with meat, and a bamboo dragonfly. It's hard for Chi Xiaoyuan not to pay attention. Perhaps he was moved by the innocence and sensibility of the two children. Chi Xiaoyuan generously asked someone to bring up 2 large ingots of silver, each worth 20 taels. He stuffed it into the little bear's hand, and said with a smile, "This is the emperor's silver coin. Uncle will only give you one. Tomorrow you will take your younger brothers to the capital for a stroll, and you can buy whatever you want with a wave. There is no need to save it." Little Xiong was confused. He didn't understand how Uncle Huang gave him the money, but he was still very happy, and nodded his promise. "Don't worry, Uncle Huang, I will definitely take care of my younger brothers, then Brother Xiaobao can come out of the palace to play with us tomorrow." Chi Xiaoyuan hesitated for a moment, then said, "Then I will take a leave of absence with Xiaobao's husband, and let him accompany you for 2 days." Several children cheered. Chi Xiaoyuan saw that they were happy and he was also happy, and patted the children's buttocks to let them play by themselves. Xiaobao told Xiaoxiang how prosperous their capital was, and even Xiaoan, who was nestled in his father's arms, was attracted by Xiaobao. Fan Zijin smiled slightly, pushed his son, and said, "Go play with your cousins." Little Treasure ran over stomping, his eyes widened like Little Bear and the others, listening to Little Treasure's description of the prosperity of the capital. The children couldn't hold back for a moment. Xiaoan whispered to the twins, "Let's go shopping today, the palace is not fun." The twins also felt that the palace was not fun, the house was too big, and they were still in the room after running for a long time just now. They wanted to visit the crowded streets of the capital. The 3 little heads got together to discuss the countermeasures. Finally, Xiaoan and the little lion pushed the tiger head out, and the tiger head ran to the mother and asked, "Mother, do you want us to accompany you later?" Mu Yangling was taken aback, shook his head and said, "I don't need your company." Hudu was happy, and asked, "Then can we play with Brother Xiaobao?" The children got along well. Mu Yangling was very happy, and nodded without thinking, "Of course." Huda ran back and happily said to Xiaoan and Xiaoshi, "Mother agrees." Xiaoan and the little lion got excited, and the little lion pushed Xiaoan, "Go and beg my aunt." Xiaoan puffed out her chest and said, "No need to ask, my mother will listen to me." Both the little lion and the tiger head looked at him enviously. The 3 of them felt that the matter of going to the street was settled. After breakfast, the tiger head wiped his mouth, stepped forward and took the little bear's hand, and said to Mu Yangling said, "Mother, let's go." Mu Yangling thought they were going out to visit the imperial garden or something, so he nodded in agreement without thinking about it. The 3 little ones walked happily around Little Treasure and Little Bear, and when they were halfway there, the 3 little ones realized that Little Treasure was taking them to the royal garden. "Did you go shopping?" Xiaobao comforted them, "Then it's tomorrow, let's play in the palace first." "But my mother agreed," Huda shouted. "When I came back, my mother asked us what fun we had, and if we couldn't answer, we were lying to my mother." Little Bear was puzzled. "Mother really agreed?" Hutio nodded with a stern face, "I'll ask mother myself." Little Xiong looked at Xiaobao, "Otherwise, let's go out today, I also really want to see how lively the capital is." When they were in Zhu Mansion, they went to the streets every day. Going shopping was like visiting their own back garden, so they didn't think it was a big deal. Hearing that his aunt had agreed, Xiaobao pondered for a while and said, "Okay, let's go today, and I'll ask someone to prepare the carriage and guards." When the group arrived at the gate of the palace, the carriage and guards were already waiting. Xiaobao has a token to go out of the palace, because he opened a school in Zhuangzi in the suburbs of Beijing, and he had to go out of the palace from time to time to experience the people's feelings, so the emperor gave him a token, allowing him to go out for 1 day every 10 days. Today is not the day for him to go out of the palace, but he personally went to the gate of the city to pick up the family members of the Rongjun Palace when they returned to the capital. Palace, they thought it was a holy will, so they just checked the exit token and waved to let them go. When Chi Xiaoyuan knew that it was a quarter of an hour before the 5 children left the palace, Xiaobeo's carriage was not slow and had already left the street in front of the palace gate. Chi Xiaoyuan rubbed his forehead, and ordered Wang Gong to be fair, let the commander of the guards send a few more people to protect them, and make sure to protect the safety of the crown prince and the young masters. The carriage stopped as soon as it entered the main street of the capital. When the 5 children got out of the carriage, 4 of them opened their mouths with a wow. Only Xiaobeo stood aside as usual. The state capital of Zhezhou is very poor. There is only one main street and one side street in such a large state capital. The merchants and hawkers are almost all concentrated on that main street. It is only when the New Year's goods are sold before the New Year that many people can be seen on the street. But the capital city is different. The roads inside intersect, and the ever-bright bazaar is divided into 5. Now the main street where they stand is not the most prosperous. However, the crowded crowd on the street and the various cries made the children dizzy. Except for Xiao Bao, the 4 children all seem to have come to the city from the countryside, and Xiao Xiong is even more afraid of losing his brothers, so he makes them walk hand in hand. Including Xiaobeo, everyone wears high-quality clothes with a low-key appearance. In the eyes of ignorant peddlers, they are poor. Besides, Xiao Xiong still insists on the principle of saving, and still buys everything. This time it was divided among 5 children. Hutu wanted to taste the difference between Beijing's candied haws and theirs, and why it was 1 penny more expensive than theirs in Zhezhou Prefecture, so Xiao Xiong bought them, just 2 for each person. Hutu chewed, shook his head and said, I think the same, brother, we were cheated. Xiao Bao said, it's always been this price. Everyone looked at Xiaobeo and the people in the capital with sympathy, you have all been tricked. The tiger had ate a pancake and thought it was delicious, so he asked the little bear to buy another one, and the little lion grabbed him, it's really stupid, save your stomach to eat other pancakes. Look, there are so many delicious pancakes. What should I do if I have no stomach after eating pancakes? Hutu rubbed his belly, regretfully said, I knew I would not have breakfast. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 845. How big can a 2 or 3-year-old child's stomach be? Even if the tiger head and the little lion were good enough to eat, and the little bear helped to share, they would soon be full. Xiaoan took a cup of sour plum soup and took a sip carefully, then handed it to Hutu's mouth, coaxing, brother, come and drink. Hutiou burped, took 2 sips from the cup, then shook his head and handed it back, I can't drink any more. Xiaoan looked at the others with some regret, Xiao Bao quickly turned his head away, he had already supported, the little lion looked back at him innocently with his stomach in his arms, the little bear just smashed his mouth, took the cup and drank it in one gulp. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief and cheered up again. A pair of round eyes began to look at other delicacies, but this time several people did not open their mouths to order, and they all just stood in front of the stall and watched. Tiger head, it smells so good, I still want to eat it. Xiaoan, write down the location, we will eat tomorrow. Little lion, let's smell it first. Little Xiong, the color is also very nice, let's ask the price first, I will bring some more copper plates out tomorrow. Xiaobeo, there are more over there. Let's ask that one later and compare them. Whoever's is fragrant, big, and cheap, we can buy it. The other 4 children nodded again and began to stroll from stall to stall, followed by the guards who followed them with embarrassing expressions, wishing they could put up a sign and write I don't know them. The nearby peddlers all looked at the 5 children curiously, feeling that this group of country folks were different from the previous country folks, who used to shy away from entering the city, wishing to hide themselves so that they could not be seen, but these 5 children did not know what to do. Running and jumping all the way bluffing, it's hard for people not to notice. But no matter how high profile you are still a countryman, and is it really okay for you to talk like this in front of the stall owner? However, these 5 children are all very good looking, especially the 2 of them who look exactly the same. Everyone has given a lot of tolerance, so the 5 children did not have any unpleasant things with the hawker. But it was not only the peddlers nearby who noticed them, but also the passers-by. In a carriage, a child about 3 years old looked at them with contempt through the window and said, "What a country bumpkin, stop the carriage. Going down for a walk." "Brother Chong, don't mess around," Chi-yu said angrily, "my elder brother is still waiting for us." Chi-chong heard the words and shouted arrogantly, "I'm going to get off the car, I'm going to get off the car, if you have the ability, you leave me here, stop quickly, I want to get off the car." Chi-yu didn't expect Chi-chong to be so arrogant. He opened his mouth wide for a moment, and as soon as the carriage stopped, Chi-chong's nurse immediately carried him out of the car. Chi-chong snorted, turned his head and shouted to Chi-yu, "I don't want you to worry about it." After speaking, he ran away with his nurse and servant. Chi-yu was at a loss for a while. His nurse was displeased and said, "Second young master, we don't care about him, let's go back first, the eldest young master is still waiting for you." "Is this okay? What if my aunt asks?" The nurse has long been dissatisfied with Mrs. Wu, and said, "You are just a 4-year-old doll, and you are only 1 year older than young Master Chong in the West Mansion. It was young Master Chong who wanted to get out of the car, and he has his own. What does it have to do with us being served by a nurse and servant? Let's go back first and then notify the people from the West Mansion to pick him up." Chi-yu was about to nod his head, but suddenly there was Chi-chong's loud cry of "Wow!" The sound was so shrill that he almost fell off the car. Chi-yu's wet nurse also changed her expression. She pressed Chi-yu, who was about to get off the car, and shouted, "Second young master, you can't get out of the car. What if it's a bad person? You sit in the car, and the slaves go and have a look." I ran there to look, but saw Chi-chong being beaten by a child, and there were still 3 or 4 children standing there, shouting and cheering, while instructing the child to beat someone, and then looking at Chi-chong's nurse and servant, they being stopped by a group of people. Chi-yu's wet nurse was startled when she saw it. Although the guards were dressed low-key, they held sharp swords in their hands. Not everyone in the capital city can wear a sword. She knew that the other party was of extraordinary status, but she also breathed a sigh of relief. Someone with status must know their family, so as long as they reported their names, it would be fine. Chi-chong, who was under pressure, was beaten up and screamed, and he became angry from embarrassment. "If you dare to hit me, I will ask my mother to kill you." Xiaoan shouted from the side, "If you kill someone, you will pay with your life." The little lion made up his sword. "You really are a bad guy, third brother, beat him up." Hu Tiou clenched his fist and hit him in the face. "My uncle is the emperor, if you dare to beat me, I'll tell him to kill you." Wow! Chi Chong Chang was beaten for the first time at such a young age. He let out an aggrieved wow, and burst into tears. Hutu's fist was even heavier, and he shouted, "You are lying, how could my uncle Huang be your uncle?" Little Lion and Xiaoan nodded again and again. This man was a fake at first glance. Xiao Xiong was also filled with righteous indignation, but because he was too old to go forward and bully the younger, he stood aside and instructed his younger brother how to beat others. Only Xiao Bao stood aside thoughtfully. But Chi Yu had already got off the car, rushed over and shouted, "You are bold, stop quickly." Xiaoan pointed at Chi Yu and shouted, "Here comes another little liar." The little lion clenched his fist and threatened him, "If you dare to lie again, I will beat you." Chiyu's expression turned ugly. My cousin didn't lie to you, my uncle is the emperor, and my father is the emperor's second younger brother, Enlihao. You release my younger brother quickly, or you will make you look good. How dare you say that you are not a liar? The little lion jumped up, almost poked his finger on Chiyu's face, and shouted, my second uncle's son is brother Xiaoan, how did he become you? That's right, liar. Huda climbed up from Chi Chong, squeezed his fists and rushed towards Chiyu. The two of them wrestled together in an instant, while the little lion and Xiaoan were busy cheering. Although Hudu is brave, he is only 2 years old after all, and Chiyu, who is 4 years old, can return punches very quickly. Seeing this, the little lion and Xiaoan didn't have time to abide by the one-on-one rules, so they rushed up to hug and help fist assist fist. Xiaobao was a little sure when Chiyu called out that his father was in Lihao. He knew that besides the fourth uncle, his father had 2 younger brothers, the second uncle and the third uncle, but he had never seen them in his memory. The emperor and the queen mother never mentioned it, so he seldom remembered it. Since Uncle Fan was the second child, they had always been used to being called second uncle and second uncle. Now when someone said he was his second uncle's son, I didn't respond for a while. Xiao Bao only heard about it, but Xiao Xiong hadn't even heard of it, so when he saw his younger brother being beaten, he rolled up his sleeves and stepped forward to help. It's a child fight, if the little bear also stepped forward, there would probably be a murder. He turned his head and asked the chief guard, I have a second uncle? What's his title? Little Xiong was taken aback, and asked, what second uncle? Isn't Uncle Fan in the palace? Master, what the kid said is probably true, Marquis and Le is the second younger brother of the Holy Majesty, the chief guard hurriedly said. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 846. It is common for children to fight, so even if 5 children rolled together, not many people cared at first, but the servants led by Chiyu and Chi Chong were stopped by Xiaobao's guards. Seeing their master being crushed after the beating, the pushing and shoving became louder. Even if they couldn't beat them, the voices of several people shouting were not small. The passers-by knew that the sons of Anlihao and Anpinghao had been beaten, and they gathered around to watch. This not-so-narrow road was immediately blocked. After confirming the identities of Chiyu and Chi Chong, Xiaobao couldn't stand by and asked the chief guard to separate the children. Huda complained to him with a swollen face, Brother Xiaobao, he bullied me, beat him up. The little lion and Xiaoan stared at Chiyu and Chi Chong with the same hatred. Chiyu and Chi Chong were much more miserable than the 3 children. Their faces were swollen and red, and they looked like they had been beaten hard. They stared at each other sadly and angrily. Chiyu was the most wronged. He still didn't understand why he was beaten when he started fighting. Now he was angry again, but he had to swallow his anger because there were so many people on the other side. He knew the current affairs, but Chi Chong didn't wink at him. He lay down and rolled on the ground just after being separated, shouting, I want my mother to kill you, do you know who I am? How dare you hit me? He turned and yelled at him, catch them up quickly. Second young master, his nanny, also burst into tears, and shouted, you wait, the slaves have already sent people to report to the officials, let the people from Wuchen Bingmacy arrest them, our family is the royal family, relatives of the state, they dare to beat people in the street, is there any law? The 3 children were shocked, can they still report to the police if they can't beat them? When they were fighting in Zhezhou, they ran away when they couldn't fight, and when they got back to the fight afterwards, they turned out to be reporters here. Huda shouted, coward, never fight with such a person again. Little lion, such a person has no friends. Xiaoan, shall we run? The little bear was also shocked, and turned to ask Xiaobao, do children go to jail for fighting? I'll go back and ask my father. Xiaobao lowered his voice to speak, so no one could hear him except Xiao Xiong and the chief guard standing behind him. Chi-Yu's wet nurse only thinks that Chi-Chang's wet nurse is also a fool, and that the other party has more guards than theirs, so she is not an ordinary person at first glance, and suing the yamen is nothing more than making a fool of the master's family. What's the use of suing the yamen if you fight for private interests? I have never heard that the yamen also accepts cases of children fighting. Just as she was about to squeeze in and hug her young master out, a group of 50% soldiers from Macy quickly surrounded them, and shouted, "What are you doing? Disturbing the law and order in the capital, wanting to do you eat aboard." Squeezing in, he saw 7 children surrounded by 7 children, 5 of whom had wounds on their faces, confronting each other in 2 parties. He frowned suddenly. Half of the street was blocked by children fighting. Xiaobao became nervous. He came out of the palace with a 3 legal agreement with his father. If he violated the law, he would be counted as a commoner. He became nervous and asked the head guard in a low voice, "Will a child be caught in jail for fighting?" Little Xiong also looked at the chief guard eagerly. "Who in the world dares to put these people in prison?" The chief guard hurriedly glanced at the prince reassuringly, and greeted 50% of the soldiers and horses. Although the emperor said that they were not allowed to interfere with the prince's affairs, today's situation is special after all. They can't look at the prince. The princes of the mansion were arrested and sent to watch on soldiers and horses. So the head guard flashed his waist badge, and said in a low voice, "This is a private matter, you lead people to evacuate the crowd as soon as possible, and I will take a few masters away." Wachan Bingma Division's corporal stared at his badge with wide eyes, then turned his head stiffly to the 5 children standing over there. "So, are they from the royal family?" He glanced at Chi-Yu and Chi-Chang again. These 2 seemed to be members of the royal family, and the children of the royal family had fought on the street. The corporal sighed in his heart. The royal family is complicated. Now that the chief guard has intervened, he will naturally not let the 2 sides continue to misunderstand. He looked coldly at Chi-Chang and his nurse who were still yelling to punish them, and went directly to Chi-Yu's nurse, saying, "Then it's His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and the sons of Nquagong's mansion in Rongjun Wangfu. If Marquis Anil and Marquis Anping disagree, just go to the palace to seek the emperor's judgment. The roads are congested at this time, and if we continue to confront each other, we may not be able to tell right from wrong. How about let it go?" Ever since he said that the person opposite was the prince, the wet nurse was so shocked that she couldn't speak. "My master is naturally a relative of the emperor outside, but my family knows about my family affairs. As a member of the royal family, Lord Ho can go to the palace during the Chinese New Year and concubine Wu's birthday, but my little master is fighting with the prince." The nurse didn't dare to think too much. She stumbled over and hugged Chi-Yu, kowtowed bang bang in the direction of the 5 children, and then hugged him and was about to get into the carriage. At this moment, she can't control Chi-Chang anymore. This matter is too big. She has to go back and inform Madame immediately. The carriage of Anlhao Mansion left the scene of the accident as quickly as possible. Before the onlookers, Chi-Chang and his nurse could realize what had happened, one of the parties involved left, and everyone's eyes fell on Chi-Chang's body. Chi-Chang's face turned red, and he was terrified. The courage that had been encouraged by the wet nurse dissipated immediately, and he burst into tears with a wow. The corporal couldn't see it, so he stepped forward and shouted to his wet nurse, "It's just a fight between the 2. If it weren't for you slaves adding fuel to the fire, how could it have become like this? I didn't see that your little master was frightened, so don't hesitate to put him down. Take away." Although the wet nurse was arrogant and domineering, she was not stupid. When she saw the wet nurse of the second young master of the Dongfu ran away without saying a word, she knew that the other party had a high status. At least they could not offend her. He stepped forward to hug Chi-Chang who was crying, and asked someone to rent a carriage. While waiting, Chi-Yu's wet nurse was very resentful. They were obviously of the same family, but they left them and ran away. As soon as Chi-Chang's nurse returned to the Anping Marquis mansion, She immediately went to Xiao Wu's to file a complaint. It was nothing more than the Dong mansions abandoning them. The next young master ran away. This distorted Xiao Wu's expression, and asked, who was fighting with Chang'er? Where does the wet nurse know? He only vaguely said that the opponent was backed by soldiers and horses from the 5 cities, and he was not afraid of them. Xiao Wu looked at his son, who was beaten with a bruised nose and a swollen face. His complexion twisted for a while. He got up and said, "Go to the East Mansion, I will ask my good sister-in-law." The elder brother left the younger brother and fled back alone. What's the point? The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 847. In Anlihao's mansion, Su's face was also livid with anger. She held her son in her arms with distress, wiped the wound on his face gently with a handkerchief, and looked coldly at the nurse kneeling on the ground. "Let you serve the young master, is this how you serve?" The wet nurse knelt on the ground tremblingly, almost prostrate on the ground. "Your servant is guilty." Su sent someone to invite the doctor, and then asked, "Tell me, who did it?" The nurse gritted her teeth and said, "Ma'am, His Royal Highness took the young masters from Rongjun Wangfu and Ankuagong's mansion into the street, and for some reason had a conflict with young Master Chong from Zifu." Su opened her mouth wide. The nurse bit the bullet and continued, "Prince and the others are visiting in private, so they didn't reveal their identities." When the second young master saw that young Master Chong was being beaten, he stepped forward to persuade him to fight, but the children fought again when they couldn't agree, which alarmed the 5 city soldiers. Ma Si, the chief guard next to His Royal Highness, revealed his identity, and this servant knows that a catastrophe has occurred, and this servant deserves to die. Su's whole body was cold, and the hands holding Chiyu trembled slightly. She kept trying to keep a low profile so that the emperor would not notice them, so that she could live a safe life, but now her son actually started a fight with His Highness the Crown Prince. Su looked at her ignorant son. She couldn't blame her, so she could only grit her teeth and say, "Little Wu. That idiot, if she hadn't taught a ruthless and arrogant thing, how could she have hurt her son?" She had advised her a long time ago that if the emperor doesn't like them, they should keep a low profile and be cautious in their words and deeds in order to seek peace. The little thing looks like I'm number 1 in the world, so it's fine for her to cause trouble for herself, but she even got involved in Anlihao's mansion. Su's face turned ashen for a while, and it was at this time that Xiao Wu called at the door. A girl ran in a panic and shouted, "Ma'am, the lady of the West Mansion brought people over and said that she wanted to see you, but the servants are almost unable to stop her." Xiao Wu's approach was menacing, and the woman guarding the gate knew it was not good at a glance, so naturally she would not let the person in as usual, but stopped the other party while calling for someone to notify Su. Su handed Chiyu over to a girl, let her carry her down, got up and straightened her clothes, raised her head and said, let's go, and see what Madame Anpinghao has done here." He sneered, I still wanted to find her, but this saved me a lot of effort." Wu was stopped outside by the maids of Anlihao Mansion. They did not dare to fight Wu, so they could only block them with open arms. Wu rushed forward to push and beat her, but they didn't have to hold back. So they got entangled very quickly, and a group of people rolled on a small path, and Xiao Wu stood in the middle and yelled. At this time, Su's face was expressionless, but he was laughing in his heart. After all, it was something that could not be put on the table. He had never seen a master and a slave scolding each other. "Okay, how long are you going to fight?" Su frowned and said, "Have you learned all the rules from dogs?" Su's people immediately separated and retreated behind her. Xiao Wu raised her eyebrows and looked at Su, "Second sister-in-law, you servants are too unruly. You dare to hit someone in front of me. Do they still think of me as Anpinghao?" Su said indifferently, "Madame Anpinghao, please forgive me, they are just following the rules." Madam Wu just wants to see me handing in the invitation card through the front door, so why bother breaking in through the side door? Xiao Wu was taken aback for a moment. Did Su not recognize her as a younger brother? Isn't she afraid that the second uncle will divorce her? Or is this what the second uncle meant? Little Wu became suspicious, but Su looked at her coldly, turned around and said, "Since Mrs. Wu is here, let's come in and talk." Xiao Wu followed behind Su into the room with a livid face, and the servants who had just entered the room retreated, and there were only two confidants left in the room. Su turned around and slapped him with a slap. Xiao Wu fell down on the chair. She covered her cheeks and looked at Su in disbelief. "You, how dare you hit me?" There was a twist on Su's face. "Why didn't I dare? I still want to kill you. Do you know how much trouble you have caused us? You idiot. You, I'm still accusing you of your son's crime of abandoning mine, and you dare to hit me." Little Wu almost jumped up and threw herself into Su's face. Su sneered, "I only hate that my son cares too much about brotherhood and runs too slowly. Do you know who your son provoked? Whoever he is, if he dares to beat my son, I will never let them go." Xiao Wu stared at Su with red eyes, and shouted, "You think you are just like you, a coward hiding in the corner, you dare not even go out to socialize." Mrs. Su smiled. Her face was like a flower, but there was no smile in her eyes. She stood in front of Mrs. Wu, looked into her eyes and said word by word, "You are so courageous, then I will see how you don't let it go. They forgot to tell you that your son hit His Highness the Crown Prince, the three sons of our fourth uncle De Qirong County King, and the sons of Duke An's family. You are so courageous, you go to settle accounts with them." Looking at the little Wu who was so scared that his face paled, Su asked softly, "Why, don't you dare? Where did all the courage go?" "Little Wu, listen, my son is being dragged by your son. Yes, you raise such a thing, I don't know if third uncle will tolerate you when he comes back." Xiao Wu's hands and feet were weak, and she almost slipped off the chair. Chi Shaitai has become more and more absurd in the past 2 years. He brings women home every now and then. The eldest son in the mansion is a concubine. If he gets angry with his son, it is really not sure who will inherit the title in the future. Mrs. Su breathed out a bad breath, and finally felt a little more comfortable. She said to the left and right, "Madam Wu, please go out, I don't want to see her in the near future." Xiao Wu's personal girl looked at Xiao Wu in surprise. Seeing her sitting on the chair as if she had lost her soul, she hurriedly stepped forward to help her and walked out slowly. "Ma'am, what shall we do?" Su said indifferently, "Go and hug the second young master, we will enter the palace to plead guilty." At this time, the 5 children had just been escorted back to the palace by the guards. Chi Xiaoyuan looked at the wounds on the faces of the 3 children, and then at the 2 children with clean clothes, and asked Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang, "You just look at it like this, brother being bullied." The head guard standing aside bowed his head, "Who is bullying whom?" "Your Majesty, have you seen the injuries of Anlhao and Anpinghao's sons?" Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang said confidently, 3 of them will fight one. It would be unreasonable for us to rush forward too. The corner of the guard's mouth twitched. It was unreasonable for 3 to beat 1. Chi Xiaoyuan also rubbed his chin and asked, "What's the difference between 3 beating 1 and 5 beating 1? "Of course there is a difference," Little Bear analyzed to him, "that kid is older than Xiaoan, so it's only natural for the 3 of them to beat 1. If I do the same, I'm older than him, so it doesn't matter." What the child meant was that if the other party was older, then there would be more people on their side, which was just equal. Chi Xiaoyuan twitched the corners of his mouth and asked, "Who is the one fighting with you?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 848. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang looked at each other, and were thinking about how to explain to Chi Xiaoyuan, the twins couldn't help shouting, "It's the son of the second uncle and the third uncle." The smile on Chi Xiaoyuan's face paused slightly, and the smile in his eyes also turned slightly cold. Before the twins noticed, they asked anxiously, "Uncle Huang, isn't our second uncle the father of brother Xiaoan? Why is there another second uncle, Bo?" Xiaoan also looked at Chi Xiaoyuan suspiciously. Chi Xiaoyuan looked at Chi Heiran. "How many children did you not tell your relatives?" "I told them before coming here, and I said it twice on the way, but these two children forget it." After hearing it, Chi Heiran stared at Xiao Xiang, and said, "Your brothers can't remember, so it's possible that you can remember too, can't stay?" Little Bear opened his mouth wide. Can he say he forgot? His father asked him to recite the genealogy of the Chi family. How would he know which uncles and brothers are relatives, which are cousins, and which are not within the 5 and 3? The father and son stared at each other with wide eyes. The little lion pondered, and suddenly shouted, "I remembered, Daddy said in the bath that the second uncle and the third uncle are in the capital, and we should remember not to confuse them, and we may see them when we come back." Huda shrank his neck and asked in a low voice, "Dad said it? Why don't I remember?" Chi Heiran rolled his eyes. "What can your mind remember?" Xiaoan asked weakly, "Then shall we apologize?" "No apology." The little lion blushed, and shouted, "We were right again. They were the ones who were wrong. They are bad people and deserve the beating." Huda nodded fiercely, turned to his father and said, "Daddy, the sons of the second uncle and the third uncle are villains, I don't want to play with them." Xiaoan nodded again and again. Chi Xiaoyuan asked curiously, "Aren't you going shopping? Why did you fight with them?" The three children talked at once, and Xiaobao and Xiao Xiang added a few words from time to time. The children had a great time at first. Although there was no room to fill their stomachs, this did not hinder their enthusiasm for visiting. Besides food, there were many interesting things on both sides of the road, which they did not have in Canaan. I have seen that the 5 children are enthusiastic. When they finished visiting a small stall and were about to go to the next stall, they turned around and were bumped into by a child. The person who was touched was Hudu. According to his account, he just turned around and took a step outside when suddenly a child rushed towards him. Huda felt that although the other party was at fault in this matter, he also pushed the other party, and the other party fell down like him, and the buttocks did not hurt, so Huda immediately got up from the ground, patted the ass is going to chase the brothers, who knows that the kid is so hateful, pointing at his nose and calling him untouchable. Huda didn't understand the meaning of the word untouchable, so he had no choice but to grow up in Jizhu Prefecture. Their brothers stopped on the street. Everyone knew that this person belonged to Rongjun Wangfu. Who would dare to call him untouchable in front of him? Hudu has always lived in a peaceful and loving environment, but he also knows that cheap is not a good word, not to mention the other party's expression. He thinks he is a reasonable person, so he just put his face down, warned the other party not to curse. Who knew that the child spit at him when he got up, and shouted, "A pariah is a pariah, if you can't afford it, don't go out in the street to block other people's roads, if you dare to bump into me, I will have you beaten to death." Hudu was shocked. He also quarreled and fought with his brothers, and fought with his friends in the Zhuangzi, but he just waved his fist and said, "You steal my things, I won't be with you. You're disobedient, I'll beat you up." There was never someone who directly wanted to beat someone to death like Chi Chong. Hudu was so shocked that he forgot to react, but Xiaoan and Xiaoshi were not vegetarians. They found that their younger brother hadn't followed, and they returned immediately. When they heard Chi Chong scolding his younger brother, Xiaoan became angry immediately. He has always been the leader among the three, therefore, at this time he sneered, looked at him contemptuously, and cursed, "Whose mad dog didn't catch it and let it out to bite people? My brother is also someone you can bully? Little lion, come on." The little lion didn't even roll up his sleeves, he just swung his fist at Chi Chang's nose, and beat the man who had just stood up to the ground. Seeing this, the servants following Chi Chang surrounded him with a whimper, but were stopped by the guards just as they were about to make a move. The little lion is only 2 years old, and he has just reached Chi Chang's eyes. He is a little shorter than him, but he often fights with the children in the village, which is not comparable to Chi Chang. He was about to hit him in the face on the waist, and after only 2 hits, Chi Chang yelled and dragged the little lion down. Hudu saw the little lion being beaten. Even though he said he wanted the little lion to be his brother, he did little brother, but he knew in his heart that he was a quarter of an hour older than the lion cub, so he couldn't be bullied no matter what. So he also rushed up, 2 against 1, and instantly crushed Chi Chang below to finish the torture. The little lion's hands hurt from the beating, so he stopped his hands and got up. Seeing that the tiger's head was able to press down on the opponent, he stood on the side to guide him with satisfaction. When Chi Yu ran over, because the opponent was a head taller than them, he looked big children. The 3 of them can only go together, because they cooperated well, so they were not injured when they beat Chi Yu, and they all got a little bit of luck when they rushed up to join the battlefield later. The 3 children stood in front of Chi Ziyuan in groups, and repeatedly stated that it was not their fault this time, and adults could not punish them. Chi Ziyuan turned his head and asked Chi Heiran, "Do you often punish the 3 of them?" Chi Heiran twitched the corners of his mouth, bowed his head and said, "These 3 boys are more naughty than Xiao Xiang when he was a child, and because of his company, he is very courageous. Aling and I dare not relax. They will naturally be punished if they do something wrong." Chi Ziyuan snorted, then turned to ask Little Bear, "Didn't Uncle Huang give you 2 silver coins? Why do you still only have no food and no toys for your younger brothers?" It's a waste to buy so much. Before Little Bear could explain, the 3 little ones had already shouted, "I just need to buy 1 portion, so that we can eat more." The 3 little ones are already used to buying a portion and eating them separately, so that they can eat many kinds of food. If they really ask each of them to buy a portion, they will only look at each other as fools, and the little bear obviously thinks so. I don't think he's being mean. "What about the toys? Don't you like those toys?" The 3 children nodded repeatedly and said, "I like it." "Then why don't you buy?" Xiaoan asked suspiciously, "Do you want to buy it if you like it?" "We like a lot of things, so we have to buy it." Fan Zijin raised his eyebrows and looked at his son with admiration. Chi Ziyuan smiled and said, "Of course not, it's just that Uncle Huang thought you would buy it." The little lion puffed out his chest and said, "We won't buy it. If we see what we can do, we will make it ourselves. If we don't know how to do it, we will leave it to the elder brother, who will make it for us." Huda nodded, "It can save a lot of money." Chi Ziyuan did not expect that these 3 were also diligent and thrifty. This is completely different from his younger brother. You must know that Chi Heiran has no concept of much money. When he was a child, he would spend as much as he had. Save money? Chi Ziyuan felt that it was all due to Aling. Frugality is better than extravagance. Chi Ziyuan nodded approvingly. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 849. It's a good thing for you to know how to save money. Chi Ziyuan didn't hold back his praise. Seeing that the 5 children were all staring at him eagerly, he reached out and touched the tiger's head with the worst appearance, and said with a smile, "Okay, it's just children fighting. Uncle Huang won't punish you this time, but next time he can't do it so easily." Eunuch Wang came in cautiously, lowered his head and stood below, and said, "My Majesty, Mrs. Lihao brought her son to seek an audience outside the palace, saying that she came to apologize to His Highness the Crown Prince and the young masters." Chi Ziyuan's smile remained unchanged, and he asked, "Is it only the Marquis Onal's mansion?" "Yes." Chi Ziyuan waved his hand and said, "Go and tell her, it's just children fighting, and it's not a serious matter, let her take the child back, don't scare the children, take some medicinal materials from the warehouse and bring them back, and give them pressure shocked. Eunuch Wan agreed and withdrew respectfully. Mrsu asked someone to take the things from the little eunuch's hand, and stuffed a purse into the other party. After confirming that the emperor was not furious, he was relieved, and carried the neatly dressed Chiyu into the carriage. The little eunuch glanced at Chiyu, saw that he was cleanly dressed, and although there were bruises on his face, but not very serious, he knew that he had been taken care of, and nodded secretly in his heart, sending Su away then go to the palace to report. After hearing this, Eunuch Wan nodded slightly, and went in to talk to the emperor. After a while, I heard the emperor say, "Understood, you step back." Wan Gong didn't dare to raise his head, and retreated respectfully, and when he reached the door, he heard Nkuagong say, "Mr. Su is quite smart, but it's a pity." Eunuch Wan closed the door, and the voice in the hall could not be heard at once. Chi Heiran was puzzled and said, "What is there to regret about her?" Aling said that Mrsu is a genius, and she doesn't like her. Fan Zijin burst out laughing with a puchi and asked, "Does Aling like Xiao Wu?" Chi Heiran's expression turned ugly when he thought of the person who wanted to make trouble even without reason. That's it? Although Mrsu is also annoying, she understands current affairs and knows who is plotting and who can only hide. Little Wu Fan Zijin curled her lips. This person is hurt, turn around as soon as he forgets the pain, he will come out to jump, and he can't die when he pats. Gone. Fan Zijin looked at Chi Ziyuan and said, "Your Majesty, why don't you scare them again? They were not very honest before. It must be that the good times have been too many recently and they have forgotten their duty." Chi Ziyuan knew that he was annoyed because Chi Chong used his status as a royal family member to do evil, so Chi Ziyuan smiled and said, "I don't have that much time to spare, this time Su's son was implicated by her, I don't believe that the two houses can live in peace, let Mrsu deal with Mrsu. The main reason is that Chi Ziyuan is also very disgusted with Xiao Wu, and he doesn't want to get involved in anything about him." Fan Zijin's eyeballs rolled, and Chi Ziyuan knew at a glance that he had a bad idea, so he picked up a book beside the couch and threw it at it, saying, "Do your errands well, leave these rear house matters to the queen and the others, you don't need to worry about it." "Brother, will I go to Baidi this time when I return to Beijing?" Speaking of errands, Chi Heiran hurriedly asked about his elder brother's arrangements for him. "You can stay in the capital," Chi Ziyuan said, "I plan to release Sushida, the commander of the Imperial Army, to fill the vacant position, and give me a good drill with the Imperial Army, and see if I can develop a new one weapons." The uncle wrote to say that the pirate ships in Fuzhou area have good guns, which are very powerful. They have been defeated in a row recently. It was the second uncle who brought people to invite you into the urn and severely injured them. The area in Fuzhou is much more peaceful. I think, since the cannon can be used in naturally, it can also be used on land, and I have already asked the two uncles to find a way to get a cannon, and you can discuss it with the Ministry of Industry later to see if it can be researched. Chi Ziyuan sighed, "The pirates are rampant this time, and the governor of Fuzhou asked for an order to relocate the fishermen and ban the sea and seal the customs, but my uncle told me privately that the salt production would not be guaranteed if they were to withdraw again, and the price of salt would inevitably increase to rise. The price of salt in Fuzhou city has reached 150 yuan a do, and in the capital it has also risen to 180 yuan a do, and further inwards and northwards, there are 200 yuan a do. I heard that in some counties, the price has risen to 250 yuan a do, and the price of salt is not stable, although it is not as big of an impact as the price of grain, but it should not be underestimated." Fan Zijin leaned forward slightly, "So you don't want to ban the sea?" Of course Chi Ziyuan didn't want to, he was a military commander, and he knew that retreating on the battlefield is the best strategy, and only taking the initiative is the best strategy, but now their navy is too weak, and they are no match for pirates at all. I have ordered all the coastal areas to the commander intensified his military training, but we cannot always be passively beaten. Chi Heiran's teeth itched when he heard that, and he shouted, "Brother, let me see how powerful that pirate is." Both Chi Xiuyuan and Fan Zijin looked at him with contempt, and asked, "Can you swim?" Chi Heiran choked, and Chi Xiuyuan patted him on the shoulder and said, "Sea battles are different from land battles. On land, I admit that you are good, but sea battles." Chi Xiuyuan shook his head slightly, and said, "The first and second uncles have guarded Fuzhou for many years, until now, I dare not take the initiative to provoke those pirates. It can be seen that they are powerful. You should stay in the capital honestly. Sort out the forces in the capital." Chi Heiran pointed to Fan Zijin and said, "Isn't Zijin always responsible for this matter?" Chi Xiuyuan said, "Zijin has a new job, you can't rely on Zijin for everything. Didn't Xixia's envoy leave? What else does he have to do? The envoy of Xixia has left, so he has to change to a new official position. You have to practice, and Zijin also needs to practice, so next month he will go to Guangdong to serve as the magistrate." Chi Heiran opened his mouth wide. "How do you go to such a place where birds don't shit?" Chi Xiuyuan spat out two words, "Get out." The two of them were kicked out by Chi Xiuyuan. Chi Heiran touched his sore buttocks. Fan Zijin gave him a sideways look, and said, "It deserves it." "Didn't I complain for you?" Chi Heiran exclaimed, "I really don't know good people." Fan Zijin snorted, "Put away your kindness. My cousin arranged this place for me to practice. Except for Fuzhou, only Guangdong has Haimao. This is my field of expertise. With my cousin's support, I can let go of my hands and feet, and Guangdong is poor, so it is easy to see political achievements, and I can go up after staying for 2 or 3 years." Fan Zijin paused, and said, "Besides, I also have my own considerations. Our silk, tea, and porcelain are very easy to sell, but due to the rampant pirates, there are very few merchants in Guangdong who go to sea by themselves, and they are all sold directly to Hong Kong. There are many foreigners who maliciously lower the price for a single order, and I went to Guangdong this time to regulate the market, and I am very interested in maritime trade. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 850. Everyone has their own areas of interest and expertise. Chi Heiran is in the military, while Fan Zijin is in the economy. He has a blueprint in his heart. At this moment, he is really fighting for his ideals. I really like this feeling of blood boiling. Chi Heiran saw that his eyes were shining like stars in the dark night, and he was also happy for him. "Would you like me to give you some guards? Guangdong is a land of barbarians, bring more people to protect your safety. If you don't tell me, I'm going to have someone with you. What about my sister-in-law and nephew? They stay in the capital for the time being, and you can send them over there when I settle down there." Fan Zijin didn't want to be separated from his wife and children for too long. Chi Heiran naturally agreed, and the two went to Cunning Palace to pick up the child and go home. In the Cunning Palace, besides the Crown Prince and Princess Mingzhu, there is also the second prince who is only half a year old. The second prince is born of concubine Zhao, and now there are 2 other nobles who are pregnant, and one of them will die soon. To produce. There are not many women in Chi Xiuyuan's harem, only 5 or 6, but Li Jinghua is on top, and there has never been a miscarriage, so one person gave birth to the second prince safely, and the other 2 have been pregnant safely. Chi Heiran had never met the second prince, and he liked his nephew very much. He hugged him in his arms and coaxed him, stuffed him with a bunch of presents, and then left the palace with his wife and children. Fan Zijin also led Xiao Xia and Xiaoan out of the palace together. Chi Xiuyuan had already asked someone to repair the former Qin Prime Minister's mansion and put up the plaque of the Rongjun Prince's mansion, so this time Chi Heiran did not return to the Qi mansion, but directly lived in the Rongjun Prince's mansion. Rongjun Prince's mansion and Nkuagong's mansion are separated by a street, so at the fork in the road, Fan Zijin waved directly, "You go back, if there is anything missing in the mansion, let the steward come to me to get it." Chi Heiran complied politely. The twins were very reluctant to part with Xiaoan. When they were in Qianan, they didn't say they ate and lived together, but they went in and out together. It was very uncomfortable to live so far away. The two of them opened the window of the car, squeezed their little heads out and shouted at a carriage next to them, "Brother Xiaoan, remember to come and play with us tomorrow." Xiaoan also opened the curtain and shouted, "You guys also come to my house to see which one is more fun, and we will go to that one's house in the future." The two little friends agreed happily. Although Nkuagong's mansion is quite large and exquisite, but in terms of exquisiteness and wealth, it is really not as good as Rongjun Wang's mansion, who made it formerly known as Qin Xiang's mansion. When Qin Xiangquan was in power, he spent a lot of effort to build his prime minister's mansion. The stones by the lake were the best dug from Tehu Lake. Although many floors were dug 3 feet to find the treasury money, but the scenery and layout inside are not damaged, and the building is still in good condition, so the restored Rongjun Palace is no worse than the Imperial Palace. The three children inspected both sides for a few days, and finally felt that Rongjun Wangfu was the most beautiful, so everyone set the base in the Wangfu. Xiaoan came to play with them in a carriage every day when he woke up, rested here at noon, and his mother would come over in the afternoon. After the father got off work, he took their mother and son home together. Xiaoan felt that this kind of life was happier than when he was in Zhu, because he not only had a mother, a brother, but also a father. But he didn't expect this kind of happy life to be so short. Fan Zijin was preparing to go to Guangdong to take up his post. When Xiaoan saw her mother packing her luggage, she thought they were going to change places again, but who knew that it was her father who was about to leave, so Xiaoan burst into tears and grabbed Fan Zijin's trouser legs and refused to let go. "I have to cry at night when I go to sleep, otherwise I will cry so much that no one can sleep." Fan Zijin hugged Xiaoan to find the twins the next day with 2 dark circles under her eyes. Xiaoan's eyes were still red, and she leaned on her father's chest in a grieved manner. When she saw the twins, she pursed her mouth and cried, "My father doesn't want me anymore. He has to leave." When the tiger head and the little lion heard this, they were immediately filled with righteous indignation. They rushed up and punched Fan Zijin, and shouted, "Bad guy, put Xiaoan down." Fan Zijin was a little embarrassed, but he was not willing to speak harshly to Xiaoan, so he said softly, "I don't want you anywhere. Father will go and settle down first and then ask someone to pick you up and your mother. Then we will be reunited as a family again." The little lion was taken aback, and asked, "Brother Xiaoan, are you not playing with us anymore?" Fan Zijin reassured Xiaoan, rubbed the little lion's hair and said, "Hudu, your elder brother Xiaoan is a little sad, do you want to make him happy?" The little lion rolled his eyes and said, "I'm not a tiger head, I'm a lion, woohoo." "I'm the tiger head," Hudu, who was standing aside, squeezed in, looking at Fan Zijin eagerly. Fan Zijin glanced at the two of them back and forth, and finally settled on the numbers on their sleeves, and asked, "Are you brothers changing clothes again?" Since Ji Ziyuan and the others have not yet learned to recognize the two brothers, in order to avoid the two of them making mistakes and blaming each other, Mu Yangling specially asked someone to embroider the numbers 2 and 3 on their sleeves, so that everyone would know at a glance. "Who is who?" "No," the little lion denied, "I'm wearing my own clothes." "Nonsense," Fan Zijin pointed to the second one above, "aren't you the third child? Why are you wearing the second child's clothes?" "I'm an older brother now, and my father and Hudu both agreed to be my older brothers." Hudu nodded again and again, "I'm the third child, my mother is too bad, she didn't tell us that the ranking was embroidered on the sleeves, and made us wear the wrong clothes for several days." The little lion nodded seriously, Fortunately, we have changed it now. Fan Zijian opened his mouth wide and said after a while, your father is quite courageous enough, your uncle Huang must not know about this, right? Hutu said curiously, my father has always been very courageous. Fan Zijian smiled hee, and gave Xiaoan to them, don't worry about your father's courage, help me take care of brother Xiaoan, take him to play, and make him happy. Xiaoan looked at his father eagerly and asked, are you still coming to pick me up at night? Fan Zijian stroked his chin and said with a smile, of course, you have fun with Xiaoxiang and the others. Father doesn't leave immediately, there are still more than 20 days left, and when I go to Guangdong, I will call someone to pick me up soon. Yours. Xiaoan was still depressed, but Fan Zijian couldn't stay any longer, so he comforted Xiaoan and hurried out of the house. The tiger head and the little lion took Xiaoan's hand from left to right, and said, let's go, we will take you to play. I've played it all, I don't want to play anymore. Xiaoan squatted on the floor beside her, with tears in her eyes and unwilling to move. I'll take you to see my father and my elder brother playing in the water. Hutu stepped forward and pulled him, saying, you are older than us, so let my father take you to play in the water. Xiaoan's eyes were full of confusion, playing with water? My aunt doesn't let me play with water. Yes, yes, the little lion shouted, it was my mother who asked my father to take my elder brother to play in the water. If you don't believe me, I will take you to see it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 851. Chi Heiran was taking the little bear to soak in the water, and a guard who was good at swimming was teaching them hand in hand. The little bear was already able to swim back and forth for a certain distance, and Chi Heiran was still thumping in the water. The three children of Little Lion rushed over cheering all the way. Chi Heiran almost choked on hearing their voices. Several guards stopped the three children before they rushed into the lake. Hutu looked at his father and brother soaked in the water, stretched out his hand and pulled his clothes, and shouted, I want to play in the water too. Little Lion and Xiaoan have quickly taken off their coats. Chi Heiran hastily asked someone to hold them back. He dared to let the little bear into the water because the little bear was already 6 years old, his body had always been strong, and now he had cultivated his inner strength. These two boys were only in their early 2 years old, and Xiaoan's body was weak. How dare he let them into the water? Chi Heiran didn't put on his shirt, and directly lifted the three boys away from the lake, and then coaxed, you are young now, wait until you are older before going into the water. Hutu struggled, I want to serve my country too. The little lion nodded fiercely, and said seriously, Father, you can't discriminate against our young age. Xiaoan was confused, you can serve the country by playing in the water. We are not playing with water, we are training. If you swim well, you will be able to defend your home and country in the future. This is what mother said. The little lion seriously relayed what his mother said. The tiger head responded with Chi Heiran couldn't help rolling his eyes, stinky boy, you have such a good memory for remembering these things, why is it so difficult for you to remember the family tree? And you, Chi Heiran pointed at the tiger's head, you don't follow your brother Yingxi in everything, you are a brother. The little lion said angrily, obviously I am the elder brother, Daddy, you have to go back on your word again. Chi Heiran choked for a moment, then said again, even if Hutu becomes a younger brother, he can't always listen to you, he has to have his own ideas. The little bear has already swam 2 or 3 rounds, and seeing his father still reasoning with the 3 younger brothers, he shouted, Father, just let the younger brothers go into the water, I think they must learn faster than you see, I know how to do it now, you won't float if you swim. Chi Heiran stared at the little bear without saying a word. Is this bear kid specially here to stab him? Mother already said that children learn faster. Dad, you have to listen to mother. Chi Heiran regretted so much. If time could turn back, he would definitely not allow a few children to sleep in the same bed with them, even if they cried and shouted that the room was strange and couldn't sleep. The words of the husband and wife have been learned by these three boys. The tiger head is fine. This kid can't remember things for more than one night, but the little lion can remember them for several nights, let alone the little bear who has fully remembered. He doesn't know if swimming is useful to them, but Baokuo's talk is completely nonsense. He promised Mu Yangling to learn swimming. From his attitude, for him, land battles are far more important than water battles. Because almost all of Daki's enemies came from land, such as Zixia, Jin, and Tubo, which was gradually becoming stronger. But Aling, who has always obeyed him strategically, insisted that the sea and land are as important as if he had taken medicine. He had to be forced to learn how to swim, and he had to write a policy statement on the importance of the sea to Daki for Brother Huang to read. If he had known that Aling hated pirates so much, he shouldn't have told him about the pirates along the coast. It turned out that when Mu Yangling learned that Fan Zijin was going to work in Guangdong, he sighed that they were going to part again. Chi Heiran took out Fan Zijin's meritorious service and told Mu Yangling that they would be able to meet again in 2 or 3 years. For the reunion, Fan Zijin probably won't let it out when the time comes. Since he mentioned the maritime trade in Guangdong, he mentioned the pirates in Fujian. By the way, Chi Heiran was filled with righteous indignation, and expressed his concern about the increase in the price of salt. Mu Yangling was shocked. He didn't expect that the southeast coast was threatened by pirates at this time. According to the timeline, it should be the Southern Song dynasty in the previous life. The sea trade was very prosperous, and the Southern Song dynasty would not be bullied too badly at sea. But the situation in Daki now is obviously different from that in the Southern Song dynasty in his previous life. Mu Yangling consulted the classics, and only then did he know that the root of the disaster lies in Dazhu. Emperor Sejong, who came across the country, should also know the importance of the sea to a country, and the coastline of Dazhu is so long, so he strongly supported sea trade during his reign. At that time, the imperial court even had a fleet dedicated to the country. Do sea trade business in Southeast Asia. But the good times didn't last long. When Emperor Jiaozong arrived, the emperor disapproved of his father's way of fighting for the interests of the people. It should be said that the emperor and his father had most of their political views. However, he successively dismantled the fleet of the imperial court, the fleet under the name of Emperor Sejong, and later reduced the salaries, food, grass, and armaments of the navy, because he also increased the treatment of the army, so this, although the matter was opposed, it was still carried out with the support of several army generals. To the descendants of Emperor Jiaozong, because of the threat of the Jin kingdom and Zixia, they put all their energy on land warfare, and the navy was repeatedly reduced. In the end, it was difficult to even maintain the basic army establishment. Emperor Yu Sejong's decree could not ban the sea on the surface, but prevented them from going to sea by increasing taxes on sea merchants. According to historical records, the heaviest tax reached 40% of the commodity value. The cost of purchasing goods and the risk of going to sea are all borne by the sea merchants. The court can take 40% of the value of the goods by setting up checkpoints and collecting taxes. After deducting all costs, it is equivalent to taking 80% of the profits at once. The originally thriving maritime trade has been cleared up at once, and those who can persist are only some wealthy maritime merchants, but until now, there are very few maritime merchants who can persist, and most of them have turned to guard at the port. As long as foreigners come to buy, as long as they don't go to sea, their taxation is just the same as that of ordinary businessmen, and there is no additional increase. At the time of Emperor Jinjian, the southeast coast was plundered by pirates, and Jingguo and Zixia were also eyeing Dazhu. In order not to be attacked by the enemy, he formally banned the sea and asked Zufeng brothers to guard Fuzhou. The coastal situation was better. Up to now, only Fuzhou and Guangdong have ports where foreigners can dock. As Fan Zijin said, there are too many monks and too little porridge, and the maritime trade between the two places is very chaotic. In order to let foreigners choose their own goods, maritime merchants often engage in price wars, which instead let foreigners win. Cheap. Being threatened by pirates and banning the sea, what Chi Heiran saw was the hardship of people's livelihood caused by the fluctuation of salt price. What Fan Zijin saw was the depression of sea trade, and what Mu Yangling saw was that De Qi had given up the entire rights and interests of the territorial waters and the sea market. Of course, she has this understanding not because of her foresight, but because she has more memories of her previous life, standing on the shoulders of history and looking back. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 852. If she was an ordinary person, she might not be able to change anything, but now she has a powerful husband. If she doesn't do something, Mu Yangling feels that she is really ashamed of future generations, so that night she pulled Chi Heiran, tell him how vast the world outside the sea is, we should strive for our own interests, and we should not tolerate pirates forever. Chi Heiran said, the sea is full of water, so what's the use of being so wide? The interest you are talking about is not maritime trade, right? Aling, I value this because he likes doing business. Don't you like farming? Are you so interested in doing business? Compared with fields, mountains, and forests, sea trade is only a small item, it only benefits some groups, and has little impact on the country and the people. Except for sea salt, I can't think of how much impact the ban on the sea will have. Fields, mountains, and forests are the lifeblood of the people. As long as we do well in these things, we don't have to worry about the country being weak, but you're right, we shouldn't be patient with pirates. Chi Heiran sighed, it's a pity that I don't know water warfare, otherwise I would definitely beat those pirates to the point where they don't even know their parents. Mu Yangling immediately thought about it, and retorted, the fields and forests are indeed the most important to the common people, but not all the common people have land. Seeing that Chi Heiran wanted to refute, Mu Yangling immediately raised his hand to stop him, saying, don't tell me about the Yanjai and Fenchen fields allocated by the imperial court. In the coastal areas, where there are few lands and many people, and most of them are saline alkali lands, those fishermen who want to share the fields are tantamount to reaching the sky. They can only rely on farming. Fishing makes a living, and the imperial government banned the sea, which affects not only Hin, but also millions of people along the coast of Hin. Seeing Chi Heiran pondering, Mu Yangling persisted and said, besides, it is most taboo to retreat to show weakness when using soldiers. Now that we retreat to the Forbidden Sea, we are undoubtedly telling the pirates that we are afraid. I am afraid that they will be more confident. They used to harass us in the offshore, but now they dare go ashore to plunder, and when we give up the 5-mile sea area in the Forbidden Sea, they will dare to cross the defense line and directly kill inland. How is this possible? Chi Heiran despised Mu Yangling, they only have a few boats, how many soldiers can they bring in? If there are 40,000 to 50,000 troops in the sky, could it be that my hundreds of thousands of troops on land are just for display? Yes, but the Qing dynasty was opened in this way. Thousands of people forced to break through the Qing dynasty's defense line. Didn't the Qing dynasty also have hundreds of thousands of garrisons? At this time, Mu Yangling asked Chi Heiran with some sadness, back in the time of Sejong, if someone told Sejong and his ministers that one day, the coastal waters of Dazhu would be ravaged by pirates, and even coastal fishermen would, do you think Sejong and his courtiers would believe that they were slaughtered and plundered by pirates? Chi Heiran remained silent. Mu Yangling sighed and said, the national power is getting weaker and weaker. If you take one step back, others can take 2 steps forward. Nothing is impossible in this world. The current ban on the sea is indeed only to reduce sea trade, increase the price of salt, and make coastal the livelihood of the common people is more difficult, but in the long run, what we have lost is the confidence and determination to fight pirates. We will retreat step by step and give up the land that should belong to us to others. Heiran, the land is ours, we cannot let it go, the sea it's also ours, and we can't let it, so you should work hard to learn water warfare and prepare for defending your home and country. Chi Heiran opened his mouth wide. He didn't expect Aling to open his mouth to ask him to learn water warfare. He immediately said, I can't even swim, if I go to water warfare, if I fall off the boat, I will die. What's so difficult about it? Isn't it just swimming? Just ask someone to teach you later. You can learn it easily now that you are young, and you don't need to go out. Doesn't our house have a big lake? You can swim as you like. Hearing that they can play in the water, the 3 children who were sleeping obediently jumped up at once, and asked to learn to swim one after another. They also wanted to prepare for defending their home and country. Mu Yangling responded with a smile, and volunteered, Mother will take you into the water tomorrow. Let Aling go swimming in the lake? Chi Heiran patted the bed to suppress them, bluffing, you are still young, you are not allowed to go. Then he glared at Mu Yangling, you don't know how to swim, and you don't need to fight in the water. What are you doing in the water? Be honest with me. Stay home. Mu Yangling was taken aback, and said, who said I can't swim? Now it was Chi Heiran's turn to stare. There are few rivers, streams, and lakes in the Northland, how can you know how to swim? It was only then that Mu Yangling remembered that she had never learned to swim in this life. She coughed lightly and said vaguely, isn't there a small river behind my house? How many years ago was that? Are you sure you can swim now? Mu Yangling rolled his eyes and said, will you know if I will swim in the water tomorrow? No need. Chi Heiran glanced at his sons, bit her ear and said, you'd better swim in the bathroom and show me. Mu Yangling's face turned red immediately, and his feet moved, but he still didn't push the smiling Chi Heiran off the boat, but he also gave him a look, if you don't get me into the water, tomorrow you will let's take Xiaoxiang and the 3 of them into the water. There are so many people in the mansion, there will always be someone who knows how to swim. Choose a place where the water is shallow and the bottom is sand and gravel. The 3 sons all looked at Chi Heiran eagerly, but Chi Heiran, who always dotes on children, was extremely determined this time. He would never bring the twins into the water. To the lake? Even the little bear was forced by his mother and son to take him with him. Little Xiang came to learn swimming with the enthusiasm of defending his family and the country, and he learned how to swim after half a morning, and Chi Heiran was still supported by the guards who knew how to swim. It was really embarrassing, isn't it? At this moment, looking at the 3 little doubtings who were looking at him eagerly, Chi Heiran still gritted his teeth and insisted not to let them into the water. No matter how sensible the 3 children were, they were still children. Seeing Chi Heiran's repeated refusals, they simply cried out with a wow. Chi Heiran saw that Mu Yangling's face turned red, and quickly put on his coat, while glaring at her fiercely. Mu Yangling was baffled and didn't understand why Chi Heiran was staring at her, but she soon ran out of time to think about it, because the 3 children came running towards her. After hearing the children's demands, Mu Yangling tried to communicate with Chi Heiran again, the water you have chosen is not too deep, it only reaches your waist, doesn't it? Let's find 3 coaches and practice one-on-one. If you are still afraid that they will have accidents, you can assign another coach to each of them. No, Chi Heiran said with a serious face, the water is too deep for the children. Unless you can find a water area that only reaches their necks in this lake, I will never let them enter the water. Mu Yangling puffed up his cheeks and glared at him angrily.